Well, good evening, everybody. I know we had about 100 people sign up for this. There's a handful of people here so far, but we will start on time and end on time and all of that good stuff. We do obviously have the chat box. Please feel free to use that. If there are any questions, anything that come up during this conversation. I am recording this. I know I had a number of people saying that they had board meetings or other commitments or other places in the world that this is not an opportune time. So I'm glad you all came. Hopefully more will join us, and we will definitely have a link to share with anyone who is interested. I'm Bryan Pearlman. It's nice for you to join me tonight. I'm in my therapy office here. This is, I guess, where the magic happens. You could say I had a full docket of 9 clients today. So the last one just left a few minutes ago. It was a great day. Wherever you are in the world, hopefully things are really nice for you. I think it was a beautiful day here in St. Louis. At least that's what I was told. So just a little bit of information for those that I don't know, or maybe this is the first time we've had an interaction or you're participating. I'm Bryan. No matter where I go, whatever my travels, I always introduce myself as an educator first. I was a school principal. I was an elementary teacher. I'm now a therapist. I do speaking engagements. I've written 3 books. And then I also teach 2 classes of Ed Psych at Maryville University here in town. Through all the efforts that we're involved in, my professional development company, our therapy practice, and also the nonprofit, which is the one who brought this to you today, Distinguished School of Mental Health and Wellness. Our commitment is to positively impact 100,000 educators. And to us, educators is anybody that works to help kids or to have anything to do with kids, teaching them, supporting them, helping them. So 100,000 educators, and through that, our hopes also that we can impact 1 million students. And over the last couple of years, we've been in front of 100,000 educators, and I'm sure by some factoring that we've exceeded this goal. So probably need to consider starting with a new goal or increasing that. But that's our mission. That's what we're involved in. That's why we do what we do. That's why we're here tonight. For those who have not joined, we have a group called the Maslow Before Bloom group. I hope that you would consider joining us. It's on Facebook. You can get there by the URL that's listed at the bottom, or just go into Facebook under groups and type in Maslow Before Bloom. And we have people from all over the world that are part of that group. We're approaching 30,000 members, and it's a really great place to network. It's a really great place to brainstorm, to crowdsource kind of solutions, whether it's about your own child or whether it's about somebody that you work with, ways to support them. I am not a big proponent of recreating the wheel if we don't have to. And since there are people in this group from all over the world, things that are unique to St. Louis or Missouri that have to do with kids probably really aren't that unique to St. Louis. Probably there is someone out there that is dealing with something very similar and can help. Let's do that. We don't have any time to waste. Whatever this thing is called now, the artist formerly known as Twitter, or now it's X, whatever. If you're on there, please take a minute to follow me. I'll certainly follow you back. It's Dr. P _ principal. So Dr. P _ principal. And again, connected with a lot of people out there. People could send me a message if there's something that I can help with, whether it has to do with your own child, someone that you work with, support, or anything to do with education, mental health, trauma, any of the above. I'm more than happy to help. I know I go to a lot of trainings, and a lot of times the person leading it say, please reach out anytime, and you get the sense really quickly they don't mean it. I do mean it, not only through these 2 vehicles, through the Facebook group or through Twitter or X, whatever it's called. At the end, I will share my email, my phone number. If there's anything I can do to help, please do take me up on that offer. I'm happy to help any way I can. So this weekend, I believe Sunday officially, From Struggles to Success is a handbook for parents and educators, was released on Amazon. And I was going to say, I think it's a pretty good book, but I'm also highly biased. You can be the judge of that yourself. Have a link at the end on how you can get this on Amazon, or you could just look under my name and the title and you'll find this book. This book's a little bit different than the first two books. I wrote Whatever It Takes for All Students to Succeed in School and Life, and I wrote that it came out in January of 2019, and really was a bunch of storytelling, a lot of stories, a lot of strategies, a lot of dumb things that I did as a teacher and principal and what I learned from it, and stories about kids and some successes and a lot of setbacks, some good strategies, I think. The following May 1st of 2020, right in the heart of the pandemic, my second book, Maslow Before Bloom, Basic Human Needs Before Academics, came out. And again, still had that flavor of storytelling, strategies, things with a real focus, probably 80% or 90% for educators and maybe 10% for others. The real difference between that and this book is this was really written probably more for 70% for parents and others that guardians and so forth, for those who work with kids or in a family. So probably more for parents and those folks, and then also enough stuff in there that would benefit educators too. And it's a lot more nuts and bolts. It's a lot more very topic specific, with a quote, with some points, with some ideas, strategies, and then some questions to reflect on each chapter. And I'm sad that I don't remember this, but almost 70 chapters, 70 different topics that are covered within this. And it comes from, me being an educator, me also, my experience in therapy and other things. But probably maybe the greatest source of this is just being the parent. My twins are 25 years old, Samantha and Matthew, and things learning, raising these two remarkable kids and everything else. And I sprinkle in a bit about, my mediation work, and also just traveling the country and hearing what concerns and challenges folks are dealing with. So a little bit of everything. You don't really have to answer us. There's like 7 of us on here right now. Hopefully, there'll be more and more watching this on video later, but just some things to think about. You don't have to use the chat to answer this, but I always like to do a pre-assessment. So I thought it'd be kind of fun. So on your own, you can kind of think about whether this is true or false. When I do trainings in person, particularly with large audiences, I'll ask folks to scream out true or false. And it's kind of funny when, there is sort of half the group saying true and half saying false, and does give me some good information as I, kind of adjust on the fly to the information that's shared and strategies that are given. But just for your own benefit, the first one is working with and/or raising children and teens is super easy. I think you'll probably figure out the answer to that one if you work with kids, if you have kids or teens, what that answer might be. There's a one-size-fits-all approach for helping kids to succeed. Okay, it's kind of that one size all, when we were all in school and you had those every or all or none, you always knew what the right answer was. There are times when we feel like a failure as a parent and or educator. I've been doing this for a really, really long time. And there are definitely times where I felt like a failure, felt like I did the wrong thing. I kind of comically, when my kids were little, I think I grounded them for life when they were 7 because they wouldn't stop arguing, and kind of thought as soon as it came out of my mouth how stupid that was. A goal in parenting and educating should be to win every argument. Good luck with that one. FOMO, fear of missing out, friend groups, exclusion, bullying, etc. is a real challenge for kids and teens. Kids and teens love it when they have their screens limited or taken away. Think about that one. It is really important to use I feel statements instead of aggressively blaming or accusing your kid or teen. Family meetings can be an effective way to foster communication and compromise. Kids and teens procrastinate only because they are unmotivated or lazy. Think about that one. There's a difference between asking a question, so your child or student asking you a question to better understand, versus asking the question to challenge authority. I'm 51 years old. I know growing up with my dad, if I asked something, it was always, you're challenging authority. I'm hoping that we realize now that sometimes it really is just trying to seek to better understand. Parents, educators, and kids do the best that they know how to at any given time. I really want you thinking about that one. There are no bad kids. That's one of the fun ones that I get to ask. There are no bad kids. And you might hear 80% of the people say true, and then you hear rumblings of false. I really have to believe there are no bad kids, or I couldn't do the job that I'm doing. Through our nonprofit, I work with a youth prison in Alaska. And if I have to believe there are no bad kids, it would make it almost impossible for me to do the work that I do. So that's just my opinion. It is important for adults to remember what it was like to be a child and teen. How many of us take times and really reflect on that? Like get out of the present situation, say, how was I when I was a kid or a teen? You know, what did that feel like? What were the things that I was dealing with, whether it's relationships, whether it's academics, whether it's, you know, different things of that sort. I think it really is important for us every now and again to remember ourselves what it was like to be, you know, a child or a teen. And I mean, I have friends that I think still have that child inside of them. I mean, if I could show you my office, I've got my toys here. I've got a glowing light. I've got a bunch of pictures and squishy things and all kinds of stuff. I mean, to some degree, there are days where I'm not sure I fully grew up yet. Boredom is a terrible thing for kids. We need to work hard to entertain them at all times. Last one is super easy. Keep the attention of adults in the evening after a long work day. Well, I'm hoping all of you pass this pre-assessment. You know, it does give you some ideas about what we're going to be talking about. And I do encourage you, as we're rolling through here, to use that chat feature to ask any questions, to answer things. And there certainly will be opportunities where I'll ask things. And if you feel comfortable and want to share, great. And if you don't, that's okay too. I've done some of these discussions and trainings in the past where it was solely done as a recording for a school district or an organization. So I'm definitely used to talking to a camera and sometimes expecting responses and sometimes not. So this might be a good time for you to use the chat feature. What are some items and or concerns you have right now related to children and teens, whether they're your own children, whether they're, you know, children or teens that you you work with, support, kids in the neighborhood? Maybe take a minute if there is something right now that you have concerns related to children and teens, and go ahead and use the chat box to share that. And I'd be happy to share that out if there is anything on your mind. I'll pause for maybe 30 seconds, give you a chance to do that. All right, you don't have to be bashful. All right, if something does come to your mind, please do use the chat, share with me, and I'm happy to do so. And even if there's something to share privately that I'd like this shared, but I don't want my name tied to it, that's okay too. And if there are any questions as they come up, oh, someone used the Q&A, that's perfect. Let's see. My teen shutting down her communication, not communicating with me. If we had the opportunity to raise hands or for you to see each other, you would see that anyone who has a teen is used to that, or had a teen or works with teens, you know, about the communicating, not communicating, the shutting down. We will definitely cover that, as I have some examples and information from the book. I do want to point out one thing that I probably won't explicitly share today, but the thing to think about is the power of, oh, someone says the chat's disabled. Oh boy. Well, you can definitely use the Q&A. I don't know why the chat is disabled. I'll work on that, but definitely use the Q&A. I'll look there instead. Sorry about that, whatever's up with that. I talk a lot, even in my practice, about the power of adrenaline and what happens when our window of tolerance closes, right? So that, like, maybe things are upsetting, frustrating, school life, just disagreements, things that happen, that when our window of tolerance slams closed, the body's response is adrenaline. And when that happens, our ability to communicate goes away. Logic, critical thinking, problem solving, reasoning go away. In fact, a psychiatrist named Bruce Perry out of Chicago has quantified this, that when that adrenaline's really pumping through, we get into sort of the reptilian brain, right? And it's fight or flight. A lot of things shut down, and it's just really survival because the brain can't differentiate at that point between real and perceived threat. And so at that point, your functional IQ can drop by 50 points, right? So that could be part of it. Another thing about the shutting down or not communicating, I'll be talking about me encouraging all families to have a weekly business of your kid meeting, like a family meeting where there's an agenda and it really gives a seat at the table. Doesn't mean the answer is always going to be yes, but it does give the opportunity for your student, your child, your teen to have a voice at the table. We have norms that go along with it. Things like we're going to assume goodwill. We're working for the betterment of our child. Everyone participates. You know, if we need to take a break from the meeting, we can. If we need more information, we can say we're going to put it on the next week's agenda. I really think that that gives that weekly opportunity to have FaceTime with your child, and it really encourages that open forum and sees that they're really being heard, you know, that they really do have a voice. There's another thing that's brought up as a first grade teacher. I'm worried about the lack of social emotional skills in our incoming children. I spend more time creating healthy human beings than educating. Tracy, that is a great point. You know, my second book is Maslow Before Bloom. Sounds like a commercial. I'm not intending it to be. And really the focus of that is that really dealing with those low-level hierarchy of needs, those low-level Maslow things first. And I think that, you know, social skills, teaching social skills, helping kids to just be human beings, as you say, is, you know, especially in the younger grades, is one of our, if not maybe our most important job. And I do have information in one of the chapters that does go into specific things to do with building social skills. There's another chapter that deals with distress tolerance, a lot to do with communicating and things. So thank you for sharing those. Those are all really good items, really good information. And I will definitely make sure that we kind of talk through that. And if anything else comes up, please, by all means, share that. So some of the example topics, and I'm going to kind of break it down in the next few slides just to kind of give you a flavor for the book. Some example topics from the book are screen time, autonomy versus accountability, sort of really fostering the you win or learn mentality. I do work with a lot of athletes here in my therapy in the therapy practice I work for. Work with a lot of athletes, high school, college, even some professional athletes, and really looking at that and really saying, you know, that how much we're learning in a sports world from losing or say learning, taking some out of it. And that could be even in classes and test taking and all kinds of facets of life, really embracing that you win or you learn mentality. Talking about another topic is the procrastination and perfectionism. I am getting a lot more calls, a lot more emails, a lot more clients, particularly those in K through 12, even college, that are really struggling, even adults that are struggling with procrastination. And then perfectionism is a big piece. And, you know, sort of the perfectionism piece goes along with the when you learn. Oftentimes that perfectionism is a fear of failure, is that everything has to be perfect. And I really hate to be the one saying this. I've not seen anything perfect in this world, right? Everything is a work in progress. And if we really help our kids understand that, it can really help them. As I mentioned in response to a question earlier there, the idea of having these weekly family meetings, also dealing with arguments, conflicts, etc. So I'm kind of going to share some things that are in the book, and then we can definitely have open forum talking about anything that we are interested in. So just picking chapter 14 in the book, and it wasn't set up in order of importance or even order of, you know, similarity. It was kind of just as I wrote this, a topic would come to mind and I'd write a chapter, and I just kind of went from there. And, you know, I don't know why managing screen time is the 14th chapter. I have no idea, but that's just the way it is. I have a quote in every chapter, and this one is, I find television very educating. Every time somebody turns on the set, I go into the other room and read a book. So I really like that quote. it is funny kind of thinking back when I was a kid, the things that were the screens, the things that were going to ruin the world or were so bad were things like cable TV starting, right? Or the first Atari was going to be the end of things, or MTV. Oh my gosh, our kids are just staring at this. I'm not sure that screens in general are inherently are a bad thing. I don't think so. There's so many good uses in the workforce, in schooling, in education, in communicating and staying connected. We saw during the pandemic how so many of us pivoted from in person to virtual. So there's so many good things that come with this. But really, kind of understanding that this is an integral part of children's lives. Look, many schools, kids have Chromebooks or tablets or different things of that sort that really are important. There's a number of classes in schools that don't have paper textbooks anymore. So, you need the screens. They certainly help make the world a lot closer, more connected, but really also finding out how we can support balance, how there are ways that we can have healthy growth, balanced lifestyles, that we are getting outside, we are getting fresh air, we are getting sunlight, we are actually meeting with people in real life, in real person, not just, texting or snapping or other things of that sort. I can just tell you how many clients I have here that are families coming together, even, just the kids and teens that are having real challenges with conflict and arguing and fighting, that it really is boiling down to when there are limits being put on to screen time. And the thing is, like anything else, screens are really important for so many ways, but it is something that people can definitely become addicted to, like any other addiction. So really thinking about what those boundaries are, really making sure that we're monitoring the content of what we're exposing our kids to, because just because it's on an app or it's on social media or it's on something else doesn't mean that that's age appropriate for 5, 15, 25, or 50-year-old. And also really emphasizing the idea, and I underline this, of quality over quantity. So some ideas, what are the alternatives? What are we supposed to do? Maybe even having screen-free zones. And I'm not saying that necessarily every family is going to sit down for a sit-down, meal every day. Maybe it's not even possible, but maybe saying that when we're eating, there are no screens. And that means for us as adults too, right? The message that that's sending our kids is that they are really important to us, right? That we want to hear how things are. We want to know what's going on and really create that culture at home, even at parts during the school day where this is a screen-free part. This is something we're going to do that doesn't involve that. Coming up with alternatives, coming up with plans, coming up with things in the environment, in your neighborhood, in the community that can be done that don't involve screens or wholly needing screens, getting out and actually exploring and doing that, keeping that open communication, which are really, really important. And the questions, which I just pulled from some of the questions, parts of it from the chapters, just thinking about how many fights there are at home that are related to screen use at your school. Maybe use the Q&A. How often is that? Is this like an hourly thing, a daily thing? I was reading some articles and hearing about different kids that were suspended or expelled from school, for attacking the teacher or doing, breaking school property, or even police showing up at people's homes, that came from taking someone's switch away or telling someone they had to get off their phone or social media or things of that sort. I mean, that's the response that you would expect from someone with some form of addiction. They're going to fight you on it. And really just thinking about that. So somebody responded in here, it's daily. I mean, it is a daily thing. And I will tell you, if I didn't say this already, being a parent, being an educator, being a trusted friend, being that trusted adult, caring person, that's not an easy job. Okay, all of the stuff that I'm talking about is difficult. So there's someone here, I'm a high school teacher, almost daily, weekly. So this isn't the type of thing that we're going to change everything in 5 minutes, but it really is systematically trying to put limits, trying to ease people, kids off of it, and modeling that ourselves. I have several kids I see here that their anxiety, their depression, their stress, all of the fights, the arguments, the aggressiveness went way down when things were limited. And of course, like anything, nobody wants their stuff limited. As adults, you don't want limits put on us. But it's a type of thing that it is hard. It's going to be a challenge to begin with, but the payoff is going to be something really great. I mean, I know families that say before you can get on a screen, even if it's a weekend or summer break, winter break, or whatever, you have to read something, you have to do a chore, you have to get outside, and then you can get on screens for an hour, or whatever that might be. So really trying to do that. And I, without a real effort to this, I don't know that I'm seeing this going to get better. I was just at a grocery store here in St. Louis, for those who are in St. Louis, at Schnucks, and there was a kid, like, I mean, I don't know if that kid was old enough hardly keep their head up, and going through the grocery store had a tablet in front of them, and I'm not faulting parents, use whatever tools we need, but I mean, it's like a kid recognizes the tablet, at the same time they're recognizing, like a bottle or something, so just kind of thinking about that, and thinking about, usage and what we're programming. I obviously, grew up as far as like computers and tablets and things. That wasn't something that started day one in school with us. We just didn't have that. So, for some people, it's like oxygen or water, it's something that's been present and supposedly needed since day one. So if there are any questions that have to do with chapter 14, please do feel free to use that Q&A. I wish the chat worked. I probably broke it. Excuse me. Navigating autonomy and accountability. So guiding children towards independence, which isn't that our goal? Isn't that our goal as educators, as parents, as trusted people in a child or teen's life? That we want to build that independence, hopefully just like our parents did. But there really is, and I'm not going to read all of this for time's sake, but I'll kind of touch on this. There really is a struggle. And at one point, I think it kind of happened in later teens, like high school. I think it's kind of, even in elementary now, late elementary, where there is that kind of struggle between kids and teens wanting autonomy. I want some say in my life in the direction that things are going, but as an educator, as a parent, but I also need that level of accountability, and we really need to have both of those. And it's not like one day something comes across a kid or a teen's forehead that says, I'm ready to stay out till 10 at night, I'm ready to be trusted with the family car, I'm ready to stay home by myself. I wish it did. I mean, it'd make life so much easier for all of us. And every one of the kids that we work with or raising ourselves are so different. I can speak for my wife. She came here from Belarus when she was 6 years old, and at a very young age was already helping take care of both of her sisters. And I mean, the things that she was doing at a young age was parenting. I mean, to some degree, was parenting even while in middle to late elementary school. Not everybody is put in that situation. Not everybody is prepared for that situation. It really is a case by case basis. And when I'm working with families or kids and different types of structures, we'll have the conversation of, let's think of ways that we can show, your responsibility, and that will get you more autonomy. Or parents are saying, I feel bad, I have to, check their portal, to make sure their homework's done. I'm checking it like 8 times a day. I don't think we want to do that. And that goes back to the comment on the business of the kid meeting once a week. That could be the time that we check in. That's the time for accountability. I'm sure none of us like having a micromanager as a boss. And quite frankly, I tell kids, none of us had kids to be a micromanager. I didn't have kids with the priority of I could kind of get at them all the time. That's probably the least reason I wanted to have kids, so just really trying to find that balance and work towards that balance. And if there is anything that you can think of on this topic, that's chapter 18. I'm happy to answer. If there's anything that you can think of that's worth sharing, please do. Again, we touched on, you win or you learn. So it's the idea of failing forward, the idea of embracing educational risks. Failure should be our teacher, not our undertaker. Failure is a delay, not defeat. Temporary detour, not a dead end. Failure is something we can avoid only by saying nothing, doing nothing, and being nothing. It's one of my favorite quotes. and really just thinking about this and really thinking about what are we teaching our kids? What are the lessons that we're teaching this? What are we modeling for them? You know, as a parent, as an educator, as a therapist now, I tell clients, I told students, I tell my college students, I make mistakes every day. If I'm not making a mistake, I'm not growing and learning. And I'm okay with that. And I own that. And I'm okay from it because I think it helps me, you know, to be a better person and to be hopefully more successful. In this chapter, you know, talking about learning from resilient figures, there are a number of people that are very famous and talking about their failures and where they became. I think a lot of the most successful people that I work with, that I engage with, that I listen to or I follow are always eager to share their failures, eager to say, "Oh, this first business I started failed miserably, but here's what I learned from it." Or I'm this athlete and I had this one way of doing things and I was awful until I learned from that and bettered myself, and then look what I was able to achieve. You know, really putting the impact on effort. You know, I remember even my own kids. My daughter came home and said, Dad, I got an A minus on something. I was a little disappointed, not because the A minus, because I watched her and she told me she didn't study for it, didn't put forth the effort. My son worked really, really, really hard and got a B plus, and I was super proud of him. My daughter's like, I don't understand. I got an A minus, he got a B plus. And the life lesson is you got to put the work in, right? You got to put the work in, right? It's not that kind of that taking your temperature today or measuring your product how you're doing right now isn't the end all be all. We're not going to get there. It's a continuous growth and learning. And a lot of it is the habits that we're teaching, the routines that we put into place. And you put those into place because I don't know right now with an 8-year-old, I have no idea what the world's going to look like for that 8-year-old, right? Think about things that have come into existence in the last 10 years. We're really preparing kids for a world we don't know what that world's going to look like. You know, but teaching some of these important life lessons, teaching the habits, teaching the way to, you know, rebound from a setback and being able to analyze it and being able to see what it was that went right and what went wrong, that's going to help you no matter what the world looks like in 5, 10, 15 years. So that's chapter 24, overcoming procrastination perfections. And we touched briefly on this. Okay. And there's, you know, the idea of the procrastination puzzle, right? Why that is, what the factors are, fear of failure, lack of motivation, difficulty managing time and tasks. Okay. The perfectionism paradox. You know, some people do say, and it's written here, that they see that as a positive trait, but the idea of self-criticism, unrealistic expectation, and then sort of that fear of making a mistake, it's the paralysis by analysis. So really helping, and I think a lot of these chapters are interwoven with one another, that it's okay to make mistakes. The procrastination thing, sometimes we do view that as someone's just, you know, in the past lazy or unmotivated. It's really important for us to get underneath that. Is it that? Is it a lack of organization? Is it an overwhelming feeling? Is it some underlying cause that's getting in the way of it? I tell people so often, I value momentum as much or maybe more than motivation. Motivation is important, but momentum, you start building that habit, that routine. We start getting things rolling. It's a lot easier to continue going. But when you're at stop, it's often really hard to get going. So just really kind of thinking about procrastination, perfectionism, and even seeing how they are connected with one another. Here we talked a little bit before about the power of weekly family meetings, and I feel like we probably covered that in some of the other chapters and just kind of discussing this, but I'm really happy to get into greater detail, helping with, you know, even an outline of what that might look like, you know, how to get things going, you know, if the first meeting is kind of quiet or not as productive, how to make it more so. You know, I use the example, the nonprofit that my wife and I and a dozen other people started. You know, I can remember our first board meeting, it was not very good. it was mostly my fault, from a planning standpoint. The agenda seemed to make sense, seemed to be a good flow, and it was just kind of like, eh. So, really trying to change the structure in a similar way that you do it with your family meeting. If the first one goes well, let's capitalize that and keep going. If it's not so, doesn't do so well, come up with some ways of tweaking that or changing it around. So again, I feel like these family meetings are really, really important. And honestly, even in a couple situation, I talk to couples that I work with that maybe don't even have kids, or maybe the focus is on them having a business of us as a couple meeting once a week, where you can deal with sort of as if it was the Pearlman couple LLC Corp of North America, where you deal with the business of it, because sometimes you really do need to do that, and that doesn't need to be done in date night. That doesn't need to be doing when it's been a long day and you just want to have snuggle time. Really kind of carving that out and treating that those pieces as an important, successful business, because that partnership is very important. Thinking like a mediator, why winning arguments is not the goal, or not always the goal. I went through mediation training with Marta Papa. Actually, she's out of St. Louis. She's one of the premier attorneys, premier mediators in the region, perhaps in the country. She teaches this course once a year, got us all certified by the Supreme Court of Missouri and Illinois to be mediators. And while I don't specifically do mediation, as far as I don't set that structure up, I certainly use that excuse me, in most everything that I do. And I get to the point of talking to people that if we come into something that one of us has to win and one of us has to lose, this isn't going to work. If we both dig in and we're not budging, this is probably not going to work. So it's really trying to find ways to meet in the middle. Okay, an example that I share all the time, when my kids were living at home, I would get a text from one of them or my wife, probably many times a week. Hey, Dad, what do you want for dinner? Hey, honey, what do you want for dinner? And let's be real, nobody really cared what Dad wanted for dinner. I don't even think that was the right question. I think the right question they were asking is, are you going to pick it? Are you picking it up? Are you going to make it? Or you pick it, so if it's terrible, it's on you and not that. So I deliberately pay attention to restaurants that got downgraded by the health department. And I would, in a text, send back, let's have whatever the place is. And it's like, yuck, gross, throw up emoji. And then whatever they were going to say, I was going to argue back with. So he said, well, we want Italian. Well, I wanted, Chinese. You didn't want it. You want Italian. I don't want it. I guess the Pearlman family's starving today. But it really takes someone within this to say, okay, I know you wanted Chinese and that place is gross, wherever that is, or whatever it is. We wanted Italian, and we know you don't really want that. Hey, what about Jimmy's Mexican? You know what? Hey, that's not a bad suggestion. Their chips and guac's pretty good. I really like their fajitas. I totally can live with that. So that everyone can leave the table feeling that they won in some way, not necessarily won, but they can live with it, that I was heard, that there's some benefit. And I think as an educator, I certainly think as a parent, coming from the mindset of, treating it like a mediator, same way that, kids are getting smarter and smarter, the idea of just telling a kid it's this way because I'm the parent, or it's this way because I said so. Sometimes, again, like that earlier chapter, kids aren't challenging authority necessarily. They may be just seeking understanding. And I think that so much, even if we don't realize it, so much of what we're doing, there are eyes on us. They are listening, they are seeing, they are learning. We are the role model for them, right? So if we want to build problem solvers, we want to be people who are good at dealing with conflict, who can overcome adversity, who can think critically and problem solve and all of that. This is a really good way to foster this in our kids. So you could certainly use the Q&A and share. This is by no means a list of every chapter. I mean, like I said, I probably should know this, but I wrote this a while ago. We have 69 chapters, so 69 topics. Here's some of the other ones that are in here. The idea of natural consequences, taking that stance, more of natural consequences than punitive consequences. Things like, and this is one that was mentioned before, embracing boredom and fostering curiosity and creativity, responsibility, chores, and life skills. I think everybody needs to be pitching in. And not just because there's allowance tied to it or increased screen time. I think that everyone needs to pitch in. If they're able to, they should help. I think celebrating successes and progress, so often we go from one goal to the next, to the next, to the next, and we're not spending time taking a moment to just celebrate the success and celebrate progress that we make. Nurturing empathy and compassion. Another one, which is tied to that, giving back, volunteering, and charity. How important that is. You know, in Hebrew, there is tzedakah, which is giving of charity. And in the Hebrew language, there's tikkun olam, which quite literally means repairing the world. And that's all of our responsibilities, right? So it's really important for us to model that, to have our kids engaged in some way, shape, or form. I know growing up, there were times where I kind of scratched my head about, like, how is this volunteering? Where, like, school would ask for something, I'd literally grab a can of tuna and bring it in. So yes, it's nice someone ate as a result of that, but like maybe taking that to a much deeper level, you know, maybe having kids doing something. I know one of the best experiences I had when I was an assistant principal, actually not far from my office, we had a group that did habitat homes. And for those of you who know me really well, I'm not the handiest person in the world at all, but just going out there, you know, of course, they pulled people for electric and plumbing and some really big and important jobs. And I think they realized very quickly I would be way more suited for rolling sod, which I did do. So, but at least I felt good about that, and blood, sweat, and tears. And then was there when we handed the keys to the mom and her children for her first home. I'm going to start tearing up now. It's such a powerful experience. Looking at things like fear of missing out, boundaries, and safety, particularly that have to do with social media, with who our kids are communicating with, and so forth. I mean, we see stories on the news daily about kids that were groomed, or about, you know, risky behaviors and challenging things, and poor decision making. We have to understand, like, the human brain doesn't fully develop till the early to mid 20s. And if we're talking about K through 12 kids, I hope nobody in K through 12 as a student is in their early to mid 20s. That would be a bigger problem. Navigating friendships. What is a good friend? You know, what's bullying? What's peer pressure? What does that stuff look like? You know, what is it like for exclusions and things? Empowering boundaries for us as a parent or educator, even as a kid, being able to teach kids to say no, and that's okay. And some of us who are people pleasers or like to help others, it's okay to say no, and no is a complete sentence. Okay, being able and being comfortable to say that and setting limits. And maybe there's a time and place that we will then further explain, but it's okay to say no, right? I adore my kids. They're, I mean, like, two of the greatest people in the world, but they will tell you, that's my dad. It's not my best friend. That's not, you know, we are concert buddies and sports buddies, but I'm the parent. I mean, that's my job. That's what I signed up for. We're super close, but I wasn't seeking to be best friends or besties with my kids, right? Makes that job kind of hard. Things like building self-worth and fostering self-image. I'm not going to pick on social media again, but man, oh man, if you looked at Instagram and you're a teenager and comparing your body type or anything to what you see on there, and kids and teens don't recognize that some of these people are photoshopped. Some of them may be AI. Some of these people who are fitness influencers, like, their full-time job is working out, right? And the pictures are photoshopped. You meet a girl and she's like, oh my gosh, I don't like my face, or I'm fat, or a guy saying, I've got to get bigger and stronger because, you know, that's what girls want, or that's what others want, and I'm so weak and so small. And they're looking at, you know, professional bodybuilders. That's kind of a dangerous thing. That really does scare me quite a bit. I'm going to get to, there was a question brought up, or a comment. I'm going to get to that in a minute because I missed it when we were talking. But really building up self-worth, building up self-image, you know, knowing that comparing ourselves, you know, I tell people, anybody, adults, kids, teens, families, the only person you compare yourself to is yourself yesterday. That's it. That's your competition. That's what's within your control. And just be a little bit better, 1% better every day, and you'll completely do remarkable things. Reframing undesirable traits in kids and teens into desirable ones. I laugh about my older sister argued constantly and debated with everyone. I'm sure to her teachers, and certainly in early in school, was very challenging. And instead of just like, be quiet, stop talking, stop challenging authority, finding a way, like they did a young attorneys group when she was maybe in third or fourth grade, and she became an attorney, and then she became a professor. So playing to those strengths, turning those perhaps, as we would say, undesirable traits into desirable talents. We talked about the impacts of adrenaline. Restorative practices goes along with the idea of we're not here for a pound of flesh or blood. That restorative practices, the concept behind that is that we're trying to educate when someone makes a mistake or violates a rule or policy. Doesn't mean there isn't a consequence. There is a consequence. But really the idea of what can we do to educate to greatly reduce the risk of that same thing happening again in the future. Picking your battles, right? I talk to people all the time, parents in particular, couples, like, is this the hill worth dying on right now? Is this the one? Is this the battle that has to be won? And some ridiculous percentage of time, no, no, it doesn't. Maybe my adrenaline's up. Maybe I'm frustrated. Maybe it was a hard day. Maybe we just don't need to do that then. Assuming goodwill first, reestablishing rules and boundaries, right? It's not easy, but even if someone says, my kid's out of control, my teen's out of control, we can we can go back. I work with families all the time with kids that would be considered out of control and educators, and we're going to start somewhere. And maybe we're going to start with the end goal in mind of what would success look like for that kid, for your child. And we're going to get there. We're going to put things in place to do it. And again, as I mentioned before, remembering what it's like to be a kid. The item I'd said from in here said, interested in natural consequences. I find parents are quick to threaten unrealistic consequence or take everything and not leave something for the kid to work for. I totally agree with that. In the most basic of examples with natural consequences, if you spend all your money on garbage, you're going to have no money left for this, right? If you don't come down to the table and eat dinner, your food's going to be cold or you're going to go to bed hungry, right? If you don't get your chores done and you don't earn your allowance, if you're an allowance person, you're not going to be able to go out with your friend. And these are very simplistic examples. There's certainly a lot more within the book. But again, I don't think we need to really threaten at all. I think it almost becomes that we're training ourselves and our kids and our students to kind of know if you put your hand on a hot stove, you're going to burn your hand and it's going to hurt. If you, go down go sledding and go off a 10-foot hill without knowing what's underneath, you're probably going to get hurt. And not that I aspire for anyone to get hurt, but there certainly are models where, even in Montessori schools, where they're like, a kid breaks a glass, we give them a dustpan and a sweeper to sweep it up. You're going to have to learn at some point, if I do this, I'm the one who's got to be responsible. If I take, and this actually happened when I was up the street as an administrator, a kid wrote a bad word on one of the chairs. Obviously, district policy, I could have just suspended him. I'm not sure what would have happened at home. I'm not sure that would have been the best thing. I talked to the parent. I said, if he can fix that chair and undo the harm and we can have a discussion, that'll be the consequence. If not, the other alternative is he is going to have to be out of school. At the time, that's what the other thing was. And he's going to have to pay or work back to fix that. So a kid had written in Sharpie, gave him sandpaper. It took him about an hour. And he undid the damage he did. If somebody spray painted on a wall, you could say, you know what, let's fix this. Let's learn from it. Let's apologize and repair, the damage that's been done. And in that case, there's learning, because this isn't a one-time or an isolated thing. It's a lifelong growing with that. Let's see. Same. Yeah, I understand and practice that, but struggle with getting others to do the same. I struggle getting others to understand this. It's a great point that you bring up, Sean. Thank you. That's the story of my life. That's the story of me traveling around, and even in working with families here. that there are people who just don't agree with what I'm saying. So I say, yes, some of this is from my experience and gut and intuition, but the majority of what I talk about, there is evidence. There is evidence to support, the methods that we use, right? And just saying, it's okay. We can agree to disagree, but if you keep doing what you're doing and you don't like the outcome, you got to change something. Change nothing, nothing changes. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting that different outcome, quite literally, is the definition of insanity. Let's see. I'm excited to read your third book. I arrived late last night. Yay, yay, yay. And you're going to a Christmas concert. Thank you. Have fun with that. Glad you joined us. Okay, so just moving on. It's a commercial. You can get the book on Amazon. If you're in St. Louis, you can get a book from me, but Amazon seems to work really well. I do apologize about how long that second URL is. One is the shortened version, which you can do a screen capture. The longer one, or you can type in From Struggles to Success, a handbook for parents and educators by Bryan Pearlman. Apparently, there is a book From Struggle to Success or Struggles to Success. Similar title, but you'll be able to see that because it looks like this. I got to a shout out. My daughter designed the cover of this book. I love it. Actually, try and think. The first book, she helped with. The second one, she designed. The third one, she designed. So yeah, there's creativity and talent in my house, and mostly with my kids, not me. So there's that. Any questions, comments, otherwise, anything that I can answer for you, I'm more than happy to. That Maslow Before Bloom group, I hope you join us. Twitter, I mentioned that, or X, whatever this is called, Dr. P_principal. I sure hope you follow us. Here's my contact information. Feel free to text me, email, go through Twitter, Facebook. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. I am busy during the day, but I do return texts, calls, emails after work in the morning, and so forth. So please do feel free to utilize that information. Sarah, great info. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone joining us. I'm hoping that the other 93 people that signed up and others, because I did get quite a few saying this time didn't work, which I understand it's that time of year. If you would, hopefully they'll get a chance to share in this. After you have a chance to read the book, I would love your feedback. I think that would be great. That is all that I have. So again, great seeing everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and have an awesome holiday season, and good luck. Reach out anytime. Take care. Thanks so much for coming. Oop, got a couple other things, so I want to make sure before oh, good. Just thank you, and you're most welcome. All right, take care and thank you.